radars can track storms, but how about a beating heart? Apparently so, and that's where we begin this edition of Sci-Fi, where science and technology collide. NASA's new radar is being credited for saving the lives of 4 people in Nepal following Tuesday's earthquake. The 2 deployed prototypes use microwave radar to find heartbeats. NASA officials say they locate people buried under 3 feet of rubble, 20 feet of solid concrete, or up to 100 feet in open spaces. And speaking of open spaces, some pretty exciting news for all of you stargazers. Right now, tucked away in some far-off galaxies, there's a starless, small, dense ball of gas, but maybe not for long. Nicknamed Firecracker, astronomers say it has the potential to become a cluster of active stars. As the pressure builds up, the gas begins to burn, and just like the 4th of July celebrations, the stars will burst into the space and light up the sky. And in case you're wondering, Firecracker is, 50 million light years away. Back here on Earth, we're used to blue skies and red sunsets, but it appears to be quite the opposite on Mars. NASA's Curiosity rover took this photo of the red planet, of the sun setting and giving off a blue hue. The photo was taken on the 956th day of the Martian rover's exploration mission. The Air Force is set to launch another space plane mission. Last October, the robotic plane returned to Earth after spending nearly 2 years in space. It's expected to go back into orbit to test experimental technologies. Don't speak the same language? That may not be a problem for long. Skype is now creating a new feature that translates video chats in real time. The software currently handles English, Spanish, Italian, and Mandarin. And this isn't your typical bike path. You're looking at a newly designed public solar-powered bike path. The Dutch designed it to capture the energy from the sun and convert it into electricity. It's expected to produce the same amount of electricity it takes to power a single house for a year. Pretty cool. You wouldn't think endurance and lying down necessarily go hand in hand, but for 12 people, it will probably be one of the hardest endurance tests of their lives. And here's why. The bed they'll be laying on is tilted backwards at an angle of 6 degrees. The participants will have to eat, sleep, even shower at this angle for 60 straight days. Can you imagine? It's all part of a study to help scientists at the German Space Agency determine the long-term effects of living in space.
All right, joining us now for the latest in science and engineering is James Anderton, Director of Content for Engineering.com. And James, how long do you think you could live in a negative angle, and how much would it cost? James, do you hear us?
Thanks, I hear you now.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I want to bring up, we talked about the mechanization of warfare, and we talked about that in the past, but we learned recently about a new T-14 Armata tank. That's the latest version from Russia, and it is reportedly faster than the U.S. Abrams tank. How is it so quick?
Yeah, that's correct, John. It uses a 1,200 horsepower diesel engine, which is actually slightly less powerful than the American M1 Abrams gas turbine or jet engine at 1,500 horsepower, but it is lighter. It's a 48-ton tank, whereas the M1A2 current version Abrams is 62 tons. So sometimes it's not about the sheer horsepower, but it's about the weight also, and the transmission. It is geared to go quickly. It's a tank which appears to be designed for mobility primarily.
And did I read also that this tank can be operated remotely?
Well, the tank itself is designed in the future to be upgraded to remote operation, but currently the turret is operated remotely. The turret, of course, is the part on the very top of the tank that contains the main gun. That loads itself. So the crew of the tank are situated down low inside the hull of the tank. But the future plans, according to the Russians, is to give it the ability to operate autonomously, yes.
And is this a signal that Russia is still very much involved in in advancing its military apparatus?
I think so. I think it's a significant upgrade to their armor capability. They have plans to purchase up to 2,300 of these by 2020. Right now, the Russians have 15,000 tanks, but a lot of them are older. They're older technology and not as capable. This would be a real advance, would probably put them on par with the latest U.S. technology. Of course, in terms of the Abrams tanks, which are being constantly upgraded, there are 8,800 of those in the U.S. Defense Department arsenal. So the Russians have some catching up to do in quantity, but certainly in quality. I think that they're making a major move here.
Yeah, and we're seeing video of those being displayed during the recent victory displays from VE Day in Europe. Russia certainly having those parades and reminiscent of the old Soviet days, very much so. James Anderton, thank you very much for joining us and keeping us abreast on the latest technology, not just in the military, but also elsewhere. It's good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, John.
All right. We come back, we're going to continue to look at today's top news. Also going to follow up with some global headlines and a very bad factory fire in the Philippines. More than 70 people dead so far. We'll take a look at that. Also, we'll continue to keep our eye on the situation in Baltimore. The engineer of that, I'm sorry, not the situation outside of Philadelphia, the engineer of that train expected to talk to the MTSB in a matter of days. More to come here on Newsmax Now. Of course, make sure you stay tuned to Newsmax TV throughout the day. We'll be with you. John Bachman, Miranda Khan coming right back with more Newsmax Now after this.